Hello, pre-algebra students. This is part 2 of our lesson on graphing proportional relationships. In part 1, you learned how to graph equations like this, where there's a whole number for your slope. And we learned how to graph equations with fractions as our slope. In this last part, we're going to talk about what you do when you have negatives. And so to help set the scene, we're going to do one final word problem. Go ahead and read through number 1. And I'm going to have you try parts A and B on your own. Part A, you're going to finish filling out this table. And part B, you're going to write an equation to go with the story here. Go ahead, pause the video now to try them, and come back when you think you have those answers. In our story, we are told that his business loses $50 every day. Using that, we can finish filling out this table here. At day 0, you can think about that like no time has passed yet. He hasn't earned any money. He hasn't lost any money. We've got that 0.00. After 1 day, using this information, we know he has lost $50. But to represent that he's losing money, I don't want to just write 50. That would mean he's making $50. To show he's losing it, I'm going to use a negative sign. Continuing to use this information, by day 2, he's lost $100. If I jump to day 5, you might need to do some math here. I would say, well, after 5 days, he has lost a total of $250. 5 days times our negative 50 would mean he has lost $250. And it's that multiplication that's going to help me with this last part. You're going to see this a lot more in algebra where there's a variable in your table. We're putting that there just to help you describe the pattern here. So no matter how many days I put, for example, if I put 10 here, what math are you doing to get to the second column? Well, we're taking the number of days and multiplying it by our negative 50. So we can show that what I said negative 50 and I wrote 10. I'm sorry. We're multiplying by negative 50. And so to show that, we can say I'm taking my days, x, and multiplying x by negative 50. And that would look like negative 50x. Doing that also helps you with part B, where you're writing an equation. This is part of our equation, but it's not an equation because I don't have equal to something. So to finish it, I would want to say equals y. Negative 50x equals y, or some people prefer to have y first. You can also say y equals negative 50x. Those are both the same. This right here is the situation that we were talking about for part 2 of this lesson. Is I'm looking at an equation that has a negative number in it, that has a negative slope. And so how does that negative number affect our graph? That is what we are about to find out. In order to think through this a little more, I want to go ahead and get my graph set up for this problem. Based on the table, I can see that days are going to go on my x-axis, and my y-axis is my earnings. Also, based on my table, I'm seeing it's not going to be too bad if I keep each line on my x-axis as 1. So counting up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like that. But it is going to be a problem on my y-axis because I see the numbers are a lot bigger. So I'm going to zoom in just a little more so it's not so tiny. So instead of counting up by 1, I'm going to count up by, I think I'm going to make every other line 50. So I'm going to make the second line 50, and then 100, 150, and 200. Now going backwards on my x-axis, that would be negative numbers, like negative 1, negative 2, but we can't have negative days. So I really don't need this side of my x-axis. But thinking about my y-axis, where we're talking about money, and also looking at my table, I definitely need the negative numbers there as well. So I'm going to go ahead and label this as negative 100. I'm sorry, negative 50. It has to be negative 50 because we have to count by the same thing the whole time. So I can't change the way I'm counting. Negative 100, negative 150, negative 200, and negative 250 like that. And then the last part, in order to graph this, I've got this wonderful table we've created. We can use that to help us graph. So for example, day 0, 0 earnings, that's going to be that point right there at 0 or on your origin. And then I see day 1 earnings is negative 50. So I'm going to go over to day 1. And since I need negative 50, I'm going to go down to 50 right there. Day 2, we said is negative 100. We didn't do days 3 or 4. We did do day 5 as negative 250, and that's all the way down here at the bottom. This is enough for me to create a graph. You could also plot those other points if you wanted, but I have enough to see that our graph is going to look something like this. I missed some of my points there. Let me try that again. It's going to look something like this. Much better. So the big difference here, I'm going to zoom back out a little bit. How is this graph different from all of our other graphs? Well, look at all the other graphs we've been doing. We changed the type of slope. So slope is direction. Look at the direction of all of these lines. Do you notice anything? All of these lines are going up. If I look at them going from left to right, the line goes up. Whereas this graph we just did with a negative slope, I see it's going down. So that is going to be the big difference in the second part, is if your slope is negative, that tells you the direction of the line is from left to right, it's going down. That is the last final piece that you need to help you graph these equations. So notice down here, we have one that doesn't have a story, and I see that that slope is negative 2/3. The fact that the slope is negative means that the line will go down from left to right. So in part 1 of this lesson, you graphed the equation y equals 2/3 x, where the slope is positive. The positive slope looked like this. Now I'm going to have you go ahead and graph y equals negative 2/3, where that slope is negative, and see how it changes your graph. This one is for you all to try first, so go ahead, pause the video, see if you can figure out how that negative sign changes the graph, and then come back for the answers. Our slope is negative 2/3, and we saw in part 1, in order to think about the graph, I'm using my best friend rise over run. Negative 2/3 tells me that my rise is negative 2. Now, I know the word rise for me makes me think, I'm rising. But since it's negative, I'm not going up. I'm actually going to go down 2. And then run is always forward. I'm going to run 3. Based on this, I'm going to start at 0, 0, just like we were doing before. But because my slope is negative, I'm counting down 2 boxes and over 3. Down 2, right 3. My rise is negative 2 and run 3. And so we get this line here. When I go to draw my line, I am going to make sure it goes through the entire graph, because unlike before, when we eliminated this part because days can't be negative, here there's no story, so that line can go through the entire graph. So if I compare this graph of y equals negative 2/3 x with the graph you did in part 1 of y equals positive 2/3 x, we see the difference is just the direction the line is going. Here, my line is going up from left to right, up 2 over 3. And here, our line is going down from left to right, down 2 over 3. The sign just tells you, is it going up or down? So based on that, I've got one final bit of practice for you. There are 5 equations over here to the left, and your job is to match them with these 5 graphs. When I did this, I used letters to kind of help me match them all up. So if you wanted to use these letters here to help you, as I clearly can't talk and write letters, to help you write down your answers when you pause this video, you can. I'll be using those letters when I match them up myself. Make sure you are trying these practice problems. It's the best way for you to get an idea how well you understand this. So I'm going to have you pause the video one final time, try this matching activity, and then come back to get the answers. For the first equation, y equals negative 1/2 x, I'm using that slope of negative 1/2 to help me. My slope is negative 1/2. I can see that that means my rise is -1, so I'm going down 1 box and over 2. Which one of these graphs is going down 1 box and over 2 boxes? That would be this one right here. For the second equation, my slope is -2. It's negative, so again, it's going down. That might be enough information for you to know which one it is. But if not, again, you can use rise over run. So for equation B, your slope is -2. That's not a fraction, so to make it a fraction, I'm putting it over 1. And now I know my line should be going down 2 boxes over 1. Which graph is doing that? That's this graph right here, down 2 boxes over 1. For equation C, our slope is 2/3. If I'm matching that with rise over run, 2/3 means our line should be going up 2 and over 3. Which graph is going up 2 boxes and over 3? That's this graph right here, up 2 boxes and over 3. Equation D, the slope is 3/2 x. So if I'm thinking of rise over run, 3/2 means I am rising 3 and running 2. Which graph is doing that? Be real careful because they look so similar, but which one goes up 3 boxes and over 2? That's going to be this one here. Up 3 boxes, over 2. And there's your point. Which must mean this is E, but we should check to make sure. Our slope for equation E is 2, so that means rise over run. I'm rising 2 and running 1. I'm going up 2 boxes and over 1. And I can double check, up 2 boxes and over 1. Yep, that matches this graph here. This is a great activity, I think, to help you start to see some of those connections between the graphs and the equations. And it's going to be really important for what we're doing in future lessons where we're going to build on this a little more. Hopefully you found this video helpful. Thanks so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.